Rohini Nakshatra, cognitive subconscious patterns, audio, visual, and kinesthetic. Some people move through life absorbing beauty, stability, and comfort, drawn to sensory pleasures and creative expression. They don't just experience the world, they immerse themselves in it, shaping it to reflect their desires and aesthetic vision. Rohini Nakshatra isn't about fast action or rigid discipline, it's about cultivation, attraction, and manifestation. Their subconscious processing is wired for creation and retention, meaning they don't just react to the world, they absorb, refine, and bring it to life. If we break it down through NLP cognitive styles, audio, visual, and kinesthetic, we can see exactly how they perceive, process, and engage with their environment. If their mind is visually dominant, they don't just see beauty, they mentally compose it, appreciating symmetry, color, and artistic balance in everything they observe. If Venus is in the first house in Rohini, they filter the world through aesthetic awareness, making them naturally attuned to fashion, design, and physical presentation. They visualize their goals, relationships, and personal success with vivid clarity, often manifesting what they desire simply by holding the image in their mind. However, if Venus is in the seventh house, their visual focus shifts outward, making them highly attuned to social cues, romantic attraction, and the visual dynamics of relationships. They subconsciously adjust their style and demeanor based on how they want to be perceived by others. If Mercury is in the third house in Rohini, their auditory processing is refined, rhythmic, and expressive. They absorb sounds, words, and intonations with heightened awareness, excelling in speech, storytelling, singing, or persuasive communication. They process spoken words musically, ensuring that their speech is harmonious, engaging, and influential. If Mercury is in the ninth house, their auditory learning expands beyond conversation, making them drawn to philosophical discussions, sacred chants, or poetic forms of wisdom, allowing them to process big picture knowledge through verbal exchange rather than just structured study. If Moon is in the fourth house in Rohini, their kinesthetic processing is deeply emotional and sensory based. They don't just experience emotions, they physically feel them, holding memories within their body and emotional core. They learn best through sensory engagement, repetition, and emotional connection, thriving in environments where they can touch, nurture, and interact with their surroundings. If Moon is in the 10th house, this kinesthetic awareness shifts toward career and status, meaning they process professional success through physical achievement and long-term emotional fulfillment. They need to feel stability and security in their work to fully engage with it. Rohini's deep sensory engagement and ability to attract and manifest make them masters of creative visualization, verbal charm, and physical presence. Whether they see, hear, or feel their reality, they process experiences through a filter of pleasure, beauty, and refinement. Their greatest strength lies in their ability to cultivate what they desire, ensuring that their world reflects the harmony, security, and abundance they seek. Rohini Nakshatra motivation direction. Some people move through life driven by desire, creativity, and the need to cultivate beauty and abundance, while others seek external validation, stability, and emotional security as their primary motivators. Rohini Nakshatra isn't about harsh discipline or aggressive ambition. It's about growth, nourishment, and the ability to create and sustain what they love. Their motivation is not fleeting or impulsive. It is consistent, deeply rooted, and fueled by attraction and emotional connection. Whether they are internally motivated, self-driven, or externally motivated, responding to external influences, depends on planetary placements within Rohini, shaping how they engage with desires, creativity, and stability. If Moon is in the first house in Rohini, their motivation is purely internal, meaning they act based on personal emotional fulfillment, creative vision, and self-expression. They don't need external validation. They pursue goals because they feel drawn to them, not because of societal expectations. Their self-worth is deeply tied to their ability to create and nurture. However, if Moon is in the seventh house, motivation becomes externally activated. They feel most driven when supported by relationships, admiration, and social approval. They seek partnerships that enhance their emotional security, and their ambitions are often tied to how they are perceived by others. If Venus is in the third house in Rohini, motivation is self-directed but inspired by artistic and intellectual stimulation. They are drawn to learning, communication, and creative self-expression, and they take action based on pleasure and inspiration rather than strict obligations. However, if Venus is in the 10th house, their motivation shifts outward. They are driven by status, recognition, and how their beauty, charm, and creative efforts are received in professional or public settings. They measure success by how much they can influence their environment through art, relationships, and social appeal. If Mars is in the 6th house in Rohini, motivation becomes internally structured and endurance-based. They work hard not for immediate gratification, but to build something lasting. They are disciplined and prefer steady, methodical growth over rapid, unpredictable success. However, if Mars is in the 10th house, their motivation becomes externally competitive. They are driven to prove themselves in career, social status, or business, seeking validation through ambition, authority, and recognition. They thrive in visible leadership roles where their success is acknowledged by others. If Rahu is in the 4th house in Rohini, their motivation is internally restless, fueled by a deep emotional craving for stability, belonging, and personal transformation. They seek to create an idealized version of home and security, often striving to fill an internal void by pursuing comfort, relationships, or material success. If Rahu moves to the 10th house, motivation shifts outward. They become obsessed with achieving status, wealth, and external success, often pushing boundaries, taking risks, and chasing unconventional paths to gain recognition. Rohini Nakshatra is fueled by desire, attraction, and the need to create and sustain beauty, love, and abundance. Whether they are self-driven visionaries, emotionally anchored nurturers, career-focused achievers, or status seekers, their motivation is rooted in consistency, emotional fulfillment, and the ability to cultivate a world that reflects their deepest desires. Their challenge is to balance external validation with inner contentment, ensuring that they pursue success for their own fulfillment rather than just for approval from others. Rohini Nakshatra, attention direction, self or others. Some people are deeply attuned to their inner world, focusing on personal desires, emotions, and self-expression, while others can constantly monitor external dynamics, responding to relationships, social settings, and the expectations of others. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its sensory awareness, attraction, and nurturing energy, naturally leans towards self-fulfillment and emotional security. However, whether they are self-focused, centered on their own needs and creative expression, or others-focused, attuned to external validation and relational harmony, depends on planetary placements. Moon and Venus in the 1st or 7th houses influence self or others-oriented attention, while Saturn and Jupiter in the 4th and 10th houses shape whether they are internally or externally driven. If the moon is in the 1st house in Rohini, their attention is highly self-focused. They are deeply in touch with their own emotions, desires, and personal fulfillment, often prioritizing their needs before external obligations. They are naturally self-reflective and intuitive, preferring to make decisions based on what feels right to them, rather than relying on external approval. However, if the moon is in the 7th house, their attention shifts outward. They become highly aware of relationships, social dynamics, and how others perceive them. They may feel the need to balance their personal needs with their partner's expectations, often seeking external validation and emotional reassurance from others. If Venus is in the 3rd house in Rohini, their attention is self-driven but socially expressive. They are motivated by creative communication, pleasure, and personal relationships, but their engagement with others is still rooted in what satisfies them personally. They enjoy expressing themselves through speech, art, or social charm, but they do so to enhance their own sense of joy rather than to serve external expectations. However, if Venus is in the 7th house, their attention becomes externally focused as they become deeply invested in maintaining harmony, beauty, and balance in relationships. They are highly attuned to social cues, attractiveness, and how they are perceived in partnerships, making them more dependent on external validation. If Saturn is in the fourth house in Rohini, their attention remains inward focused, often centered around emotional stability, security, and personal discipline. They are highly self-reliant, cautious, and protective of their inner world, making them less likely to seek external validation. Their focus is on building a foundation for themselves, rather than constantly adjusting to others. However, if Saturn moves to the 10th house, their attention becomes externally structured, prioritizing reputation, professional authority, and public perception. They measure success by how well they are respected in society, making them more concerned with external expectations and responsibilities. If Jupiter is in the fourth house in Rohini, their attention is internally expansive, meaning they are focused on emotional wisdom, philosophical reflection, and personal spiritual growth. They seek inner contentment rather than external approval, often prioritizing family values, traditions, and deep self-awareness. If Jupiter moves to the 10th house, their attention shifts towards social influence, leadership, and the need to guide or inspire others. They focus on how they can contribute to society, expand their professional standing, and leave a meaningful impact in the external world. Rohini Nakshatra's natural ability to attract and manifest allows it to function both inwardly and outwardly, depending on planetary influences. The challenge is balancing personal fulfillment with the need for social validation, ensuring they don't become overly self-absorbed or excessively dependent on external praise. Mastering this balance allows them to create, nurture, and inspire while staying true to their inner desires. Rohini Nakshatra, understanding chunk size. Some people grasp the bigger picture instantly, focusing on broad themes and overarching visions, while others break everything down into smaller, detailed steps, ensuring precision before moving forward. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its sensory depth, creativity, and ability to manifest, is naturally inclined toward absorption and retention. But whether they process information in big picture, macro, or detail-oriented micro chunks depends on planetary placements. Jupiter and Mercury in the 1st, 5th, and 9th houses influence whether they focus on expansive thinking or precise details. If Jupiter is in the 1st house in Rohini, their understanding is big picture oriented, meaning they process life holistically, focusing on broad patterns, creative possibilities, and long-term success, rather than minor details. They naturally absorb wisdom, philosophy, and large-scale concepts, thriving in environments where visionary thinking is required. They prefer intuitive knowledge over structured learning, sometimes overlooking small details in favor of larger insights. If Jupiter moves to the 9th house, this big picture thinking expands further, making them deeply interested in philosophy, spiritual knowledge, and global perspectives, often thinking in broad, interconnected ways rather than step-by-step logic. If Mercury is in the 5th house in Rohini, their thinking is highly specific, detail-focused, and analytical. They break down complex ideas into structured, smaller components, making them excellent at strategy, research, and fine-tuned creative execution. They learn best through meticulous observation, repetition, and refining processes until they are perfected. Unlike Jupiter, which generalizes, Mercury in this placement seeks exact definitions, structured learning, and precise execution, excelling in technical mastery, structured art forms, or knowledge-based professions. However, if Mercury is in the 9th house, their processing expands toward bigger picture perspectives, meaning they absorb broad philosophical ideas, but still maintain an attention to detail when analyzing texts, scriptures, or intellectual debates. If Ketu is in the 1st house in Rohini, their understanding is paradoxically big picture, yet deeply instinctual. They see patterns intuitively rather than logically, often absorbing large amounts of information without consciously realizing how they learned it. They trust gut feelings and insights over structured reasoning, making them seem mystically attuned to knowledge, but sometimes struggling to articulate how they arrived at conclusions. However, if Ketu is in the 5th house, their thinking becomes highly detail-oriented, but nonlinear, meaning they notice hidden details, abstract symbols, and deep subconscious patterns others might overlook. They may have a natural talent for decoding symbolic or esoteric knowledge, but may struggle with structured, traditional forms of learning. Rohini Nakshatra's deep sensory intelligence and ability to absorb knowledge effortlessly make it naturally adaptable to both macro and micro thinking, depending on planetary influences. When planetary placements emphasize big picture thinking, they thrive in visionary leadership and creative expression, but when detail-oriented influences dominate, they become methodical experts capable of refining beauty, structure, and form to perfection. Their challenge is to balance their love for broad inspiration with the patience to master fine details, ensuring that their creative and intellectual pursuits result in lasting impact. Rohini Nakshatra, frame of reference, internal or external. Some people trust their own instincts, relying on their inner sense of worth and direction, while others seek external validation, measuring their success based on how they are perceived by others. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its sensory awareness, creativity, and desire for comfort and stability, is naturally inclined towards self-containment and inner satisfaction. But whether they are internally referenced, self-driven, or externally referenced, seeking validation from others, depends on planetary placements. Jupiter, Moon, Venus, and Saturn in the 4th and 10th houses shape whether they derive confidence, fulfillment, and purpose from within or through external achievements and recognition. If Jupiter is in the 4th house in Rohini, their frame of reference is deeply internal, meaning they trust their own wisdom, emotional experiences, and personal philosophies to guide their actions. They don't require external approval because their sense of purpose is rooted in inner stability and moral values. They make decisions based on what feels right for their long-term growth, rather than how it will be perceived by society. However, if Jupiter is in the 10th house, their focus shifts outward. Success becomes defined by career status, public recognition, and how much impact they make in the world. They may still be wise and introspective, but they now measure growth through achievements and societal validation rather than inner fulfillment. If the moon is in the 4th house in Rohini, their sense of validation is strongly internal and emotionally driven. They make choices based on how they feel rather than external expectations, seeking security and comfort in familiar environments. They are self-reliant in emotional matters, trusting their instincts and personal experiences over societal pressures. However, if the moon moves to the 10th house, their frame of reference becomes externally conditioned. They are highly sensitive to how they are perceived in public, how others respond to their emotions, and how well they fulfill social and professional expectations. They may feel a strong need for validation from career success, social status, or professional accomplishments. If Venus is in the 4th house in Rohini, they are internally referenced in matters of beauty, love, and self-worth. They don't need public approval to feel valuable. They measure happiness through personal relationships, emotional harmony, and the ability to create beauty in their private world. They enjoy self-indulgence and personal pleasure without necessarily needing social recognition. However, if Venus is in the 10th house, their reference frame becomes externally focused. They measure self-worth based on public image, admiration, and career success in creative or luxury-driven fields. They want to be seen as charming, elegant, and influential, making external validation a key driver of their ambitions. If Saturn is in the 4th house in Rohini, their sense of self is internally structured, meaning they build their confidence through self-discipline, emotional resilience, and personal stability, rather than external validation. They trust long-term consistency over social expectations, ensuring that they feel secure within themselves before seeking approval from the outside world. However, if Saturn is in the 10th house, their reference frame becomes externally conditioned. They seek validation through career achievements, professional responsibility, and how well they conform to societal standards. They may push themselves to meet rigid expectations of success, defining their worth based on external accomplishments rather than internal fulfillment. Rohini Nakshatra's deep emotional intelligence and creative magnetism make it naturally self-reliant. But planetary placements determine whether they operate from an internal sense of satisfaction or seek recognition from the external world. Their challenge is to balance inner fulfillment with external validation, ensuring that they neither isolate themselves emotionally nor lose themselves in chasing approval from others. Rohini Nakshatra, action preference, proactive or reactive. Some people take charge of situations, initiating action without waiting for external cues, while others observe, adapt, and respond based on circumstances and emotional cues. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its stability, creativity, and attraction-based approach, doesn't rush into action, but rather moves deliberately and purposefully. Whether they are proactive, self-initiating, or reactive, responding to external triggers, depends on planetary placements. Mars, Mercury, and Rahu in the 3rd, 5th, and 10th houses shape whether they take action first or respond strategically based on external influence. If Mars is in the 3rd house in Rohini, their action preference is highly proactive. They take initiative in communication, decision-making, and personal pursuits, ensuring they control their environment rather than reacting to it. They thrive in competitive, fast-paced situations, making them natural leaders in business, negotiations, and high-stakes discussions. However, if Mars is in the 10th house, their proactivity shifts to career and status, making them ambitious and driven to take control of leadership roles. They push forward in work and reputation-building efforts, ensuring they establish dominance rather than simply responding to external career opportunities. If Mercury is in the 5th house in Rohini, their approach to action is more reactive and mentally driven. They prefer to analyze, observe, and process before making decisions, ensuring that their actions are well thought out and adaptable. Unlike Mars, which acts on instinct, Mercury in this position thrives on social cues, learning from surroundings, and engaging with creative or intellectual opportunities as they arise. However, if Mercury is in the 10th house, their reactivity becomes strategic in professional and public settings. They prefer to watch workplace trends, adjust to external influences, and carefully craft their career moves rather than rushing into decisions. If Rahu is in the 3rd house in Rohini, their action preference becomes erratic and unpredictable, leaning toward hyperproactivity in communication, networking, and risk-taking. They are restless, competitive, and highly innovative, ensuring that they stay ahead in dynamic social and professional environments. However, if Rahu moves to the 10th house, their action preference shifts toward reactivity in career and public life. They respond to external opportunities, societal trends, and unconventional paths to success, often making bold career moves in response to social pressures rather than pure internal ambition. Rohini Nakshatra's grounded nature ensures that their actions are rarely impulsive, but planetary placements determine whether they take control of situations immediately or adapt based on external circumstances. Those with proactive tendencies initiate and lead, while those with reactive tendencies master the art of responding and adapting. Their greatest strength lies in balancing their natural ability to attract opportunities with the awareness of when to act decisively to shape their own path. Rohini Nakshatra, operational style, options versus procedures. Some people thrive in flexibility, exploring multiple ways to accomplish a goal, while others prefer structured step-by-step methods to ensure efficiency and control. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its sensory intelligence, creativity, and ability to cultivate stability, prefers to build and refine rather than act impulsively. However, whether they operate with an options-based mindset, preferring flexibility and adaptability, or a procedures-based mindset, favoring systematic and structured execution, depends on planetary placements. Rahu and Mars in the 3rd and 6th houses encourage flexibility, while Mercury and Saturn in the 6th and 10th houses promote structure and discipline. If Rahu is in the 3rd house in Rohini, their operational style is highly options-driven. They thrive in fast-moving, unconventional environments, preferring to explore different pathways rather than committing to a single structured approach. They excel in fields requiring creativity, adaptability, and risk taking, but they may struggle with consistency, frequently shifting focus or abandoning routines in pursuit of novelty. If Rahu is in the sixth house, they still prefer options, but with a stronger problem solving mindset. They constantly test different strategies in work and health, seeking alternative solutions rather than following traditional methods. If Mars is in the third house in Rohini, they operate in high energy, instinct driven mode, excelling in dynamic environments where quick decision making is required. Their approach is fast, bold, and direct, preferring to experiment with different strategies rather than following rigid rules. However, this can sometimes clash with Rohini's patient and nurturing energy, making them act too quickly instead of refining their efforts. If Mars is in the sixth house, their operational style becomes more disciplined and structured, integrating endurance and strategic effort into their workflow, ensuring they build long-term success rather than chasing short-term wins. If Mercury is in the sixth house in Rohini, their operational style leans heavily toward procedures. They excel in structured, detail-oriented work environments, ensuring that tasks follow logical sequences and efficiency is prioritized. Their ability to analyze, organize, and refine makes them highly effective in technical, administrative, or communication-based roles. Unlike Rahu's unpredictable approach, Mercury in this position seeks clarity and refinement through methodical execution, ensuring that each step follows a calculated process. If Saturn is in the 10th house in Rohini, their work style is procedural, long-term focused, and highly disciplined. They prefer structured career paths, hierarchical systems, and rule-based environments, excelling in corporate, government, or leadership roles that require patience and endurance. They dislike chaotic or unstructured work and thrive when given clear responsibilities and expectations. While this complements Rohini's desire for stability, it can also make them resistant to sudden change, making adaptability a challenge. Rohini Nakshatra's natural love for refinement and stability allows it to function in both structured and flexible environments, but planetary placements determine whether they thrive in adaptive, multi-approach strategies or in precise, methodical execution. The key is for Rohini natives to balance their need for security with the openness to explore new possibilities, ensuring that their creative and intellectual strengths are fully realized. Rohini Nakshatra, views general or specific. Some people focus on the bigger picture, seeing patterns, overarching themes, and long-term visions, while others analyze life through specific details, breaking things down into precise, structured elements. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its creative intelligence, sensory depth, and ability to cultivate stability, has a natural inclination toward absorbing and retaining information deeply. However, whether they lean toward generalized big picture thinking or detail-oriented specific analysis depends on planetary placements. Jupiter and Mercury in the first, fifth, and ninth houses influence whether they focus on broad themes or precise intricacies. If Jupiter is in the first house in Rohini, their thinking is broad and general, meaning they process life through big picture awareness, long-term vision, and overarching themes rather than focusing on minor details. They naturally see connections, grasp philosophical concepts, and think expansively, often valuing intuition and experience over precise calculations. They are drawn to creative endeavors, leadership, and wisdom-oriented fields, but they may sometimes overlook details in favor of conceptual thinking. If Jupiter is in the ninth house, their big picture approach becomes even more philosophical, making them focus on spiritual growth, expansive knowledge, and higher learning, often contemplating universal truths rather than getting lost in specifics. If Mercury is in the fifth house in Rohini, their thinking is highly specific, detail-focused, and analytical. They prefer to break down information into structured steps, ensuring clarity in learning, communication, and problem solving. Unlike Jupiter, which grasps concepts broadly, Mercury in this position seeks exact definitions, logical structures, and technical mastery. excelling in fields that require precision and structured execution. However, if Mercury moves to the ninth house, their processing expands toward bigger picture perspectives, meaning they balance philosophical curiosity with detailed analysis, making them well-rounded in both conceptual and structured thinking. If Ketu is in the first house in Rohini, their understanding is paradoxically broad yet deeply intuitive. They absorb knowledge without structured learning, often seeing patterns instinctively rather than through logical progression. Their thinking is abstract, visionary, and detached from the need for step-by-step explanations. However, if Ketu is in the fifth house, their thinking becomes highly detailed but nonlinear, meaning they decode hidden patterns, subconscious symbols, and esoteric meanings that others might overlook. They may struggle with traditional learning methods, but excel in intuitive or symbolic analysis. Rohini Nakshatra's deep sensory intelligence and ability to absorb information effortlessly make it adaptable to both macro and micro thinking, depending on planetary influences. When planetary placements emphasize big picture awareness, they excel in visionary leadership and creative expansion. But when detail-oriented influences dominate, they become methodical experts capable of refining beauty, logic, and form to perfection. Their challenge is to balance their love for broad inspiration with the patience to master fine details, ensuring that their intellectual and creative pursuits result in lasting impact. Rohini Nakshatra, work preferences, together, proximity, or solo. Some people flourish in collaborative environments, constantly exchanging ideas and working with others, while others prefer proximity, staying connected but maintaining their own space. Some thrive best when working entirely alone, deeply focused on their craft. Rohini Nakshatra, with its creative intelligence, nurturing essence, and ability to manifest stability, is naturally inclined towards sensory-driven work and consistency. However, whether they function best in team settings together, near others but independently, proximity, or in complete solitude, solo, depends on planetary placements. Venus, Mercury, and Ketu in the 3rd, 6th, and 10th houses shape their ability to collaborate, work alongside others, or prefer self-reliance. If Venus is in the 3rd house in Rohini, they prefer working together, excelling in creative, social, and communicative work environments. They thrive in team settings where beauty, aesthetics, and interpersonal relationships matter, such as media, fashion, design, or diplomacy. They enjoy collaboration and shared creativity, finding fulfillment in harmonious teamwork. However, if Venus is in the 10th house, they still prefer team-based environments but with an authoritative role, ensuring their ideas and leadership are recognized within the group rather than just being a supportive team member. If Mercury is in the 6th house in Rohini, they work best in proximity-based settings, where they engage in discussion and collaboration but maintain their own intellectual independence. They excel in analytical, research-driven, or strategic roles, such as writing, business consulting, and problem-solving professions, where they can communicate with others while still handling tasks individually. If Mercury moves to the 10th house, their proximity-based preference extends to leadership positions, meaning they engage in high-level discussions and strategy sessions, but prefer to work independently on execution. If Ketu is in the 6th house in Rohini, they work best solo, preferring autonomy, deep concentration, and self-driven projects. They dislike rigid structures and workplace politics, thriving in fields such as research, spirituality, or creative arts, where they can focus without external distractions. If Ketu is in the 10th house, their solo work preference becomes even more pronounced. They may rise to high positions, but remain emotionally detached from corporate life, often feeling more at ease in freelance, consulting, or behind-the-scenes roles, rather than traditional office settings. Rohini Nakshatra's ability to attract and create abundance ensures they can excel in both team-based and independent roles. But planetary placements determine whether they thrive in direct collaboration, require space while staying connected, or work best alone. Learning to balance their natural creativity and emotional depth with the right work environment helps them achieve long-term stability and fulfillment in their career. Rohini Nakshatra, experience, association versus dissociation. Some people fully immerse themselves in their experiences, feeling deeply connected to emotions, relationships, and the world around them, while others step back, analyze, and detach, preferring to observe rather than fully engage. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its sensory depth, emotional richness, and ability to cultivate beauty and stability, naturally leans toward association, meaning those influenced by this nakshatra tend to engage deeply in emotions, relationships, and their material surroundings. However, whether they associate, fully engage, or dissociate, detach, and observe from a distance depends on planetary placements. Mercury and Jupiter in the 4th, 5th, and 10th houses influence whether they immerse themselves in experiences or keep an emotional and mental distance. If Mercury is in the 4th house in Rohini, their experience is highly associated, meaning they are deeply engaged in their emotional and intellectual world. They process life through communication, memory, and attachment to home and comfort, making them highly sensitive to their surroundings. They struggle with detachment and objectivity, often feeling emotionally overwhelmed by relationships, family matters, and personal experiences. However, if Mercury is in the 10th house, their experience shifts toward dissociation. They become more analytical, career-driven, and focused on external achievements, often placing logic above emotions. This clashes with Rohini's natural emotional warmth, potentially leading to difficulty fully engaging in personal relationships while prioritizing professional goals. If Jupiter is in the 5th house in Rohini, their experience remains highly associated, especially in areas of learning, creativity, and relationships. They immerse themselves in romance, artistic expression, and personal joy, experiencing emotions in grand, expansive ways. They often idealize love and creative endeavors, fully feeling every moment without stepping back to analyze. However, if Jupiter moves to the 10th house, their approach to experience becomes more dissociated. They focus on teaching, guiding others, and public influence, but may struggle with deeply engaging in personal emotions. This placement may make them see relationships and emotional experiences in a more detached, philosophical way, which clashes with Rohini's natural need for intimacy, security, and emotional connection. If Ketu is in the 4th house in Rohini, their experience is strongly dissociated, particularly in emotional and personal matters. They struggle with attachment to home, family, and personal comfort, often feeling emotionally disconnected from their surroundings. Rohini's desire for security and emotional warmth clashes with Ketu's detached, karmic energy, making them feel as though they do not belong in their own home or struggle to connect with nurturing relationships. If Ketu moves to the 5th house, this dissociation extends to creativity, romance, and self-expression, where they may feel a lack of joy in artistic pursuits or approach relationships with emotional detachment, struggling to fully engage with passion and pleasure. Rohini Nakshatra's natural inclination is to associate deeply with emotions, beauty, relationships, and material security, making placements that encourage that dissociation, like Ketu or a heavily career-focused Mercury or Jupiter, feel unnatural or conflicting. The challenge for Rohini natives with dissociative planetary placements is to balance their need for emotional engagement with the detachment required for wisdom, independence, or career success, ensuring they neither lose themselves in emotions nor cut themselves off from the rich experiences that bring them true fulfillment. Rohini Nakshatra approach, matching versus mismatching. Some people seek harmony, aligning with existing structures, traditions, and patterns to create stability, while others look for differences, challenge conventions, and disrupt the norm to bring about change. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its nurturing, creative, and growth-oriented energy, naturally leans toward matching, preferring to enhance, refine, and cultivate what already exists rather than challenge or dismantle it. However, whether they are matching, seeking alignment and reinforcement, or mismatching, focusing on differences and disruption, depends on planetary placements. Saturn and Rahu in the 3rd and 6th houses influence whether they maintain tradition or seek radical transformation. If Saturn is in the 3rd house in Rohini, Their approach is matching oriented, meaning they prefer stability, structure, and adherence to proven methods in communication, learning, and social interactions. They align with traditional ways of thinking and are cautious about adopting new ideas too quickly. They are deliberate, patient, and methodical in decision making, ensuring that their actions are rooted in practical wisdom. However, if Saturn is in the sixth house, their matching tendency becomes even stronger in work, routine, and discipline. They follow strict structures, established hierarchies, and systematic approaches, making them highly reliable, but sometimes resistant to innovation. This enhances Rohini's natural preference for stability, but may cause them to struggle with adaptability in fast-changing environments. If Rahu is in the third house in Rohini, their approach becomes highly mismatching. They challenge communication norms, reject conventional learning paths, and seek alternative ways of thinking. Unlike Saturn, which follows rules, Rahu questions and rewrites them, making them innovative, rebellious, and unconventional in their approach to learning and networking. While this can bring groundbreaking ideas, it also clashes with Rohini's preference for stability and refinement, making them feel restless and uncertain rather than deeply rooted and secure. If Rahu is in the sixth house, mismatching becomes even more pronounced in work, competition, and health. They refuse to follow traditional workplace rules, find creative loopholes in structured environments, and challenge authority figures. This can lead to success in unconventional career paths, but also disrupt Rohini's innate need for harmony and order. Rohini Nakshatra's natural ability to attract, nurture, and refine aligns well with a matching approach, where they seek to expand and cultivate existing systems. However, planetary placements determine whether they follow structured traditions or challenge them in pursuit of innovation. The key for Rohini natives is learning when to align for stability and when to break patterns for necessary transformation, ensuring that they create beauty and abundance without becoming stagnant or overly disruptive. Rohini Nakshatra time experience, in time versus through time. Some people live fully in the present, engaging deeply with their emotions, actions, and surroundings, while others track time as a structured sequence, constantly considering past experiences and future consequences. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its sensory depth, creativity, and ability to manifest stability, naturally leans toward experiencing life in the moment, fully immersing in emotions, beauty, and pleasure. However, whether they are in time, focused on the present, or through time, aware of the past, present, and future as an interconnected timeline, depends on planetary placements. Saturn and Jupiter in the first seventh house axis influence in-time perception, while their placements in the fourth 10th axis shape a through-time approach. If Saturn is in the first house in Rohini, their time experience is in time, slow, and deeply rooted in the present moment. They move deliberately, ensuring that every action is carefully executed and meaningful, fully engaging in each stage of life with patience and responsibility. They don't get distracted by the past or worry too much about the future. They focus on mastering their current environment and ensuring long-term security in the moment. However, if Saturn is in the seventh house, their in-time awareness shifts toward relationships, making them deeply engaged in partnerships, social stability, and present emotional fulfillment within commitments. While they are reliable and dedicated, they may struggle with long-term vision or adjusting to changes in their connections over time. If Jupiter is in the fourth house in Rohini, their time experience becomes through time, focused on long-term emotional security, family legacy, and personal growth over generations. They process life with a broader awareness of how past experiences shape the present and how today's choices will affect the future. This makes them highly reflective, emotionally wise, and cautious in their decisions, ensuring that they build lasting stability and honor ancestral influences. However, if Jupiter moves to the 10th house, their through-time perspective expands toward career, public standing, and creating a lasting impact in the professional world. They don't just work for immediate gains, they carefully craft their career path, ensuring their efforts contribute to a long-term legacy. If Rahu is in the first house in Rohini, their time experience is hyper in time, focused on personal advancement and immediate gratification. They act on instinct, desire, and the pursuit of pleasure, often chasing the next exciting opportunity without fully considering long-term consequences. They prefer to shape their reality moment by moment, feeling restless when confined to a structured timeline. If Rahu moves to the seventh house, their focus shifts toward relationships and external validation, meaning they become obsessed with how others perceive them in the present, often seeking attention and admiration in the moment rather than thinking about long-term commitments. If Ketu is in the fourth house in Rohini, their time experience is through time but detached from the present. They process life through ancestral wisdom, subconscious memories, and karmic influences, often feeling like they are reliving past cycles rather than actively shaping their own present or future. Their decisions are based on deep intuitive knowledge rather than logical sequencing. If Ketu moves to the 10th house, their through-time focus applies to career and public influence. They may achieve professional success, but feel emotionally disconnected from their work, seeing it as a duty rather than a personal ambition. Rohini Nakshatra naturally immerses itself in the richness of the present moment, but planetary influences determine whether they stay fully engaged in the now or track life through a structured past, present, future perspective. Mastering this balance allows them to enjoy the pleasures of life while ensuring their actions contribute to lasting security and fulfillment. Rohini Nakshatra, primary interest motivation: people, activities, places, or things. Some people find motivation in relationships and social connections, while others are driven by action, exploration, or material security. Rohini Nakshatra, known for its sensory depth, creativity, and ability to manifest stability, naturally seeks pleasure, beauty, and emotional fulfillment. However, whether they are primarily motivated by people, activities, places, or things depends on planetary placements. Jupiter and the Moon influence social motivation, people. Mars drives action-oriented focus, activities. Mercury directs curiosity toward places, and Saturn and Rahu determine material or structural motivations, things. If Jupiter is in the seventh house in Rohini, their primary motivation comes from people, particularly in the form of guidance, partnerships, and social interactions. They thrive in relationships where they can learn from or mentor others, and their drive often comes from seeking harmony, companionship, and wisdom in their connections. Their personal growth is closely tied to who they associate with and how they influence others. However, if the moon is in the first house, their motivation from people is deeply emotional and self-reflective. They seek personal validation through relationships and intimate connections, often prioritizing love, family, and emotional security over external success. If Mars is in the third house in Rohini, their primary motivation is activity. They are action-oriented, competitive, and driven by constant engagement. They thrive on challenges, movement, and proving themselves through action. Whether in business, communication, or physical endeavors, they need to be in motion, testing their limits and refining their skills. However, if Mars moves to the sixth house, their action-based motivation becomes more structured and endurance-based, meaning they focus on persistence, steady progress, and refining their craft over time, rather than quick bursts of energy. If Mercury is in the fourth house in Rohini, their motivation is deeply tied to places, particularly in the form of intellectual stimulation and a sense of home or belonging. They are drawn to comfort, movement between environments, and shifting between different locations to keep their mind engaged. If Mercury moves to the 10th house, their motivation for places expands toward professional environments, meaning they are driven by career-based travel, networking opportunities, and intellectual engagement with different locations or industries. If Saturn is in the sixth house in Rohini, their primary motivation is things, particularly structure, mastery, and material stability. They thrive in building something lasting, ensuring efficiency, and accumulating expertise in a specialized field. They are not easily distracted by emotions or people. Instead, they seek discipline, order, and practical success. If Rahu is in the 10th house, their material motivation becomes status-driven, fueled by ambition, unconventional success, and the pursuit of symbols of power. They are drawn to rare, prestigious, or high-status achievements, constantly chasing something that will cement their influence in the external world. Rohini Nakshatra's desire for pleasure, stability, and creativity ensures they pursue their goals with consistency and an eye for beauty and refinement. Whether their passion is for people, action, places, or tangible success, they approach it with patience, emotional depth, and an unwavering commitment to nurturing what they desire into reality.